All right, week 5 here, everyone, and my annoying little virus updates are back. I had someone get them off my computer very quickly, and then I was fooled for another down update this program of Windows, blah blah blah, and it was the virus of unwanted ads was back. So they will probably pop up a couple times while I'm filming this for you, but please ignore them and focus on week 5, which we are getting into. These objectives, the exegetical methodologies that contribute to orthodox theological diversity. That sounds very complicated, but it's not all that bad. Examine the importance of historical cultural context in determining the meaning of Paul's references to Judaism and works of the law. So what we want you to do, you're going to understand when Paul, he references Judaism a lot, everyone knows that, and when he says works of the law, that is specifically going back to the Jewish understanding of what works of the law is. And if you understand the historical cultural element that Paul is speaking into, meaning if you understand the culture and history of which Paul speaks into, the context of the scripture of that day, it's going to bring out freshness, not newness, because it never was new, but for most Bible scholars or learners, if you will, the understanding of Judaism and works of the law will be exponentially more increased, benefited, whatever you want to call it, if you understand those things. Explain the message of the New Testament epistles on theological doctrines. So the message of the New Testament, in particular with those written by Paul or the epistles, and then the theological doctrines that play into that, is the objectives this week. Your reading, usually self-explanatory, but I'd highly, you have to watch this 9-minute YouTube clip, or until 9 minutes in. I forget how long it is altogether. I think this is the clip here. Yeah, so you don't have to watch the last minute and a half. So about 9 minutes here. And then these videos I think are pretty helpful for you. Oops, I didn't mean to. Well, there's the John Piper one. But the principle of single meaning is helpful on this. And then justification and what the new perspective on Paul is. So John Piper has spoken a lot on this topic. And then N.T. Wright is kind of one of the other big scholars on this topic. N.T. Wright, by the way, if you guys aren't aware of him, one of the most respected scholars in the world, if not the considered by some the top scholar, if you can even quantify that, which you can't. But even if you or others don't agree with everything he says, he's got some incredible things and works that he writes on and is highly respected by even those who disagree with him. And he was invited along with Rick Warren and Russell Moore to the Vatican recently to speak into the topic of gay marriage and some other things that the Pope wanted input from evangelicals and other faiths on. But so he was invited along with everyone knows who Rick Warren is, and Russell Moore, I believe, is one of the Southern Baptist scholars over here. So anyway, just so you get kind of a frame of reference for him. So be sure to watch these videos before doing the work this week. Don't forget your ethics of homosexuality assignment is due at the end of this week as well. I already went over that assignment earlier, but if you have questions on it still, please feel free to let me know. Then the new perspectives assignment. Don't forget you have to read it first. And then open up this document here, which I have already done here, and complete this assignment. So essentially you're going to complete the following questions based upon this week's readings and the media viewing, so you got to do those first. For each question, give at least a full paragraph answer. So just not one sentence. You want a good chunky paragraph. And then answer questions in we're getting specific. 12-point regular non-bold font, meaning we don't want you to, skimp by trying to give me like 18-point fonts or whatever. Be sure to complete both parts 1 and part 2. Don't forget the second page down there. All right, and then obviously do by the end of this week. So the questions. should be pretty self-explanatory, but we're wanting you. This isn't necessarily hugely reflective. We're going to have it be, hopefully it'll integrate into your other assignments, but we're wanting you to simply understand the new perspective here in part 1. So this is kind of regurgitating information, but the purpose isn't to regurgitate. It's that you have done the reading and you adequately understand what it is. This isn't about agreeing or disagreeing with it. It's just understanding what it is. So what is the meaning and significance of Sanders' term, covenantal nomism? That, if you answer that correctly, it means you've done the reading on that part. According to the new perspective, what does the Lutheran interpretation of Paul get wrong about first century Palestinian Judaism's idea of salvation by works of the law? So, according to the new perspective, what it's saying is the Lutheran interpretation of Paul gets something wrong about the first century Palestinian Judaism's idea of salvation by works of the law. So they're saying there's a Lutheran interpretation of this when Paul says salvation by works of the law that they miss. But according to the new perspective, they communicate what is that. So you're answering that. And then number 3, according to Dunn, which is in your big thick book, how should readers understand the works of the law in Paul? What are the implications of this on Christian teaching? Finally, according to Wright, what is the center of Paul's gospel, if not justification by faith? So if he theoretically makes the argument that justification by faith isn't the center of Paul's gospel, what is it? And explain why he says that. Then according to Wright, what is wrong with the law court metaphor of justification? So there's this law court metaphor he speaks of, and he says what's wrong with it. So again, this isn't a interpretation assignment or a opinion or reflection as much as have you done the reading and understand it. Okay? Then in part 2, you'll be assessing this new perspective. So in response to the questions given below, compose a critique of the new perspective, including both positive and negative criticism. What do you think of Sanders' historical cultural observations from the first century Judaism, that sparked the new perspective? So Sanders essentially makes this observation based on the history and culture from the first century Judaism, and he says that this is what sparked the new perspective, meaning this whole new perspective wave, which not even everyone in the new perspective is in agreement on everything. It's simply a way that we're realizing, or that they have, those who would say that they're a part of it, or at least those that say that this author seems to be in the new perspective camp, or however theologians and scholars like to put people in groups. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What they're saying is what sparked this new perspective. So what are they saying? Those Sanders is historical cultural guy. He's looking at this first century Judaism, and there's something that sparked this new perspective, this wave that has caused many scholars to come in alignment on this area. So what do you think on that? And if you don't know, you don't know, but at least try to interact with Sanders in some of the observations he makes that seem to point to why he is a proponent for the new perspective. Then, to what extent do you agree with the new perspective's critique of Lutheran justification? So going back up to this question up here, on number 2, it critiques the Lutheran interpretation of justification, salvation by works of the law, right? Oops, it's not letting me scroll. Do you agree with their critique of that? Doesn't mean you necessarily agree fully with the Lutheran view, but you can still either agree or disagree with the new perspective's critique of that. Okay? And finally, do you believe that the new perspective is a part of Orthodox Christian teaching that can be held by an evangelical church? Meaning, there's a lot of evangelicals that have just gotten wisps of it that think, oh, this is like a heretical, horrible, scary, doctrine that, that means that people who follow it are, they're not even Christians anymore, and they don't understand the gospel and that sort of thing. There may be some in that camp, but the New Perspective in general, do you believe that that is Orthodox teaching? Can you hold that view as an evangelical church or person? Why or why not? So if this is a place for you to respond your thoughts and give your take on it after doing the reading. So some of you, I understand, may not may never have even heard of this, and so it's not that intriguing initially. But I can assure you, this is one of the biggest theological debates that's going on of our time. So this is one of those things where you really put you get your scholar tag as a Moody student, where you're really wrestling with things that typical church people aren't wrestling with. But I guarantee you, how you view this affects the way you teach Paul. Whether you agree with it, kind of agree with some of it, or disagree with all of the New Perspective, this study will help you be refined in how you teach Paul. So it's a big deal, regardless of where you stand, and it's always good to read those of varying perspectives and have fun with it. So that's the New Perspective assignment this week. Then your discussion board, from exegesis to theology. The road from the text to systematic theology is difficult and has been so for all of church history. This week's reading in Schreiner, Probing the Theological Context, alerted you to the difficulties that come when doing systematic theology in the Pauline epistles. One of the key issues in this process is the way in which scholars, students, and pastors humbly synthesize Paul's teaching into coherent theological systems. As Schreiner comments, theology is less of a finished task and much more of a continuous journey. Theologians are constantly struggling to understand how to fit passages together to faithfully represent what exactly Paul thought about important topics like salvation, predestination, the work of the Holy Spirit, and so forth. If you are having trouble understanding the topics discussed above, the process, i.e. the process from exegesis to theology, that means of the text to, okay, how does God fit into this, and how do I live my life in relationship with God to that? A careful reading of the Schreiner reading should be helpful. So this, again, is really on Schreiner. You're reading in Schreiner this week. And then after doing the reading, and in light of this above discussion here, answer one of the following two questions in a discussion board post. Just one of the following two. So one, due to the complexity of some issues in New Testament interpretation, do you believe that it's possible to have two differing positions on certain issues while still maintaining orthodoxy? Now, we're not talking about very small nuanced things. We're talking about major things like, is it possible to have two different views on justification and maintain orthodoxy, or meaning like still being a Christian follower of Jesus? Consider as examples the ongoing debate today about predestination, once saved, always saved, or not, and the New Perspective on Paul, which is part of your assignment this week. So those could be the two major things, because those are pretty massive. Calvinist and Arminian debate, New Perspective on Paul. These are major debates. Regardless of where you fall, understanding the other view is a critically important thing to do. So that's one question. The second would be reflect on the following statement. Theology is less of a finished task and more of a continuous journey, which, sometimes you can take an open-ended statement like that. Oh, we're just all on a journey of knowing God, and some people go to Allah, some go to Jesus, and some go. We're not talking about that. We're talking about for Bible-believing, Jesus-loving followers of Christ. Theology can still be interpreted as less of a finished task and more of a continuous journey, meaning that I could study Paul, for instance, forever, and would I ever get it down perfectly, or would I be Paul or have it in me perfectly, or have explored all the nuances that the Spirit-inspired work through Paul wants me to go through? Or, it is a continuous journey. right?